wrong place, pal.
Talk is cheap.
Bam!
Hey guys, Marmy here. I'm finally doing a lesson video on Hook Intercept today, which was requested by a viewer some time ago. So yeah, I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry, okay? Please forgive me. Alright, so in my opinion, Hook Intercept is one of the most interesting moves on paper for a couple of reasons. Let's get into it. The main thing about Hook Intercept is obviously its hyper armor, making it one of the few attacks with hyper armor you can use in the default moveset. Which, by the way, the other ones are the reverse Hook Intercept and the bad duck strike. The reverse Hook Intercept, or the back elbow as I like to call it, is very important, and so I'll talk a little bit about it later. But Marmy, what the f is hyper armor? Okay, so hyper armor, like it says in game, is the ability to withstand an enemy's attack animation. In Sifu and many other games, like Souls-likes for example,
Oh God!
when getting hit, your character goes into what's called a hit stun, meaning you can attack during this animation. That's why playing with unlimited threats may sometimes result in something like this. Great game design, by the way! Just kidding, but yeah, in this game hit stun kinda stacks, making it very easy to get comboed in certain situations. So why would you want to withstand enemies' attack animations, you may ask? There are a couple of reasons. Perhaps the main reason is that a lot of enemies in Sifu take advantage of hyper armor themselves, and so you can counter hyper armor with hyper armor. Also, enemies have entire sequences with hyper armor, like what the fuck bro, chill.
Daddy, chill.
So you might as well fight fire with fire. Take note that using hyper armor as a counter is only an option and not the option. You know, Hook Intercept is a nice little punch in the face, but it's also a way to be defensive. Now that I think about it, I feel like it shares some similarities with Flowing Claw. They are essentially both defensive and aggressive attacks. A property of hyper armor in this game is that you can deflect during the animation, meaning you take no damage. And even if you miss the parry, you also take reduced damage. It might be a little hard to get the hang of deflecting during hyper armor, so here's a tip. I feel as if it's easier to learn hyper armor parries by using attacks of alternate movesets like Yang's triple hit or raining strikes, which are pretty long in comparison. Agile moveset also has a lot of hyper armor stuff that you can try and use for practice. When you build a little bit of this skill and then return to Hook Intercept, it will make much more sense. At least it did for me, so I hope it'll be the same for you. Also, I don't know if you guys ever noticed, but whenever I use hyper armor, I tend to spam deflect. Which, by the way, is a perfectly reasonable defensive tactic in this game. It might actually save you more often than not. Which brings me to one of the most interesting points about using Hook Intercept, which is sacrifice. Basically, I often wonder whether or not sometimes I should trade some damage for tanking some hits. I feel as if this can spark some discussion on what is ideal gameplay, so I won't be getting too much into it. But there are some exceptions to hyper armor. Sadly, you can't tank everything. There are some attacks enemies can do that will interrupt your Hook Intercept. I'm talking for example about the Staff Disciple and the Bodyguard Sidekick. Also, if you try to deflect everything, you might accidentally parry an enemy during the animation, which in turn will interrupt you. Personally, I would change this to attacks that can be parried, can only be deflected during hyper armor animations, so that you don't accidentally interrupt yourself. But that's just my opinion. Which brings me to another important topic of this video, which is priority. Basically, in Sifu, whoever attacks first gains a sort of offensive priority. Enemies even like to do a dirty thing, which is they start attacking out of range so that they can reach you with a priority advantage. That's why I like to stay as aggressive as possible at all times, so that I have to defend as little as possible, which in turn results in saving time or just being efficient. Alongside being a defensive tool, Hook Intercept is also a way to regain priority. In this case, it's important to remember enemy resistances, and so take note not to use it or think about it as a combo extender. Alright, so now I'm gonna talk a little bit about the back elbow, which is definitely one of my favorite attacks in the default moveset. The reason why it's so good is because it shares properties with Duck Strike, which makes the next attack consistently land. I've talked about it a couple times before, but I'm doing this recap because I mean, come on, it's a really good attack. It also has dodge high frames, but these only activate a little bit after the impact. But luckily it has hyper armor during the whole animation. Take note that even though Duck Strike and Hook Intercept have the same reverse attack, they will have different follow-up sequences. For example, if I use reverse Hook Intercept, I like using something like Push Kick, and if I'm using Duck Strike, I'll use Rising Claw. Last but not least, a really good incentive to use Hook Intercept, in this case offensively, is its structure damage. It deals really good structure damage, making it especially useful for breaking guards. Alright, so just to recap, you can use Hook Intercept to deal really good structure damage, tank multiple attacks, or counter hyper armor. I especially recommend it the most against advanced and elite grunts, juggernauts, and disciples. So anyway, that's about it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and that it was useful, and I'll see you guys in the next one.